So I'm going to give a talk about Firebase. Obviously, 10-15 minutes isn't enough to get in all the details, but I'm hoping to give you an overview of why you might want to use it. This is a quick slide about myself. So currently I'm working at Intuit. I'm a full stack developer. I've been doing development for over 15 years now, and very heavily into JavaScript recently, working with Angular, getting to Ember as well. And if you're interested, you can check me out on Twitter and GitHub. And I'm definitely not what I'd call a Firebase expert. I'm just an enthusiast. I read about it online. It sounded really interesting to me, and so I've been using it in a personal project of mine, but not any large-scale production apps. Okay, so what is Firebase? I think that's probably what everyone's interested in hearing. So I think to talk about that, I really want to discuss what are the main reasons why you want to use Firebase. And there's a few real killer features that really differentiate it. So the basic idea, if I had to sum up Firebase in just one sentence, is it's basically back-end as a service. And what I mean by that is your typical application, especially let's say you're doing a web app, you're going to have a database, you're going to have a lot of code that, say, reads data from the database, you're going to have services, probably RESTful services that are going to interact with the database to do your reads and writes and updates. And you just have a lot of kind of boilerplate code that deals with that whole back end. And of course, you're also going to have your client-side code, whether using a front-end framework or not. And Firebase basically allows you to kind of replace all that back-end code or most of that back-end code and just kind of use this API that they provide to you. So when you think of developing an application, you can easily spend 50% of the time and resources on that back-end code. And really, Firebase is going to allow you to focus all your time on what the users are going to see. It's going to be that front-end experience. Another real cool feature that it has kind of just out of the box is this concept of automatic data syncing. So let's say you have multiple people that have your application open, and someone makes a change maybe to some inventory field, how many products are remaining. The other people that have the app open are actually going to see that data update in real time. So to do that without Firebase, you'd have to use something like a Socket.io, or if you guys are familiar with Meteor, Meteor kind of allows you to do that sort of functionality. Firebase does that for you. Meteor is great, by the way, but it is a kind of back-end product and requires a lot of development. Firebase, again, allows you to just focus on the client side. Another real nice thing about Firebase is you don't have to worry about scaling. It just kind of automatically scales for you. So as your user base increases, you don't have to worry about, oh, do we need to throw in another server and a load balance or anything like that. It just kind of automatically scales for you. Yet another thing that you don't have to worry about. And then another kind of nice feature is not really a killer feature, but they kind of have authentication kind of built into their framework. So you don't have to define your own security scheme. It's kind of nicely wrapped up in their API. And then you can also integrate using several OAuth providers. So for example, if you want your users to sign in using a Facebook account or Twitter account, that's kind of, the APIs make it very easy to do so. Okay, so even though it does all this stuff for you as a service, at the end of the day, there's still data, and data is persisted. So while you don't necessarily work with the database directly, you work through the API, and through the API, you're working with JSON. So if you've ever worked with a document database such as Mongo, you're probably already familiar with that concept, which is really nice, by the way, if you ever worked on a stack where you have JavaScript on the front end and say Mongo on the back end, you're doing JSON from top to bottom, and it's a real big time saver not having to translate JSON into some sort of relational map or do reverse mapping. So it's a similar concept. It's basically one big JSON tree that you can manipulate through the API. We'll get to a code sample in a second. And then there's also a dashboard that allows you to do various admin types of tasks, but one of those tasks is you can go ahead and view that large JSON tree if you want to just kind of see what it looks like. Now, once you get familiar with Firebase and use the API a bit, you're gonna be very comfortable and just kind of use it directly. I find the dashboards more when you're kind of just learning the API. You might want to kind of validate what changes you're making But it's a nice, ooh, I guess we'll keep on going.
It's 9 o'clock.
All right, and then another real nice feature that Firebase has for you is it manages disconnected behavior for you. So if you ever worked with a mobile app before, a company I worked for before had users go out in the field and have to do data entry, and if they lost network connectivity on their phones, basically the app kind of blew up in their faces. So that's obviously not a great thing to have. And Firebase kind of has this automatic data management kind of built in the system. So anytime a client makes a change to the front end, they're updating some data, it actually goes into a queue. And if the network connectivity is there, it just kind of instantly goes through the queue. If the network connectivity is down for any period of time, it just kind of waits into the queue until it comes back. So there's no like big negative side effect for end users. They can still work, they can still do things. And so, you know, I've talked to people that had to build this kind of functionality in some mobile apps that they wrote, and they actually said they spent more time writing the disconnected functionality. It actually took more time than writing the app itself. So yet this is another thing that Firebase kind of just gives for you out of the box for free. Okay, and then here is the only code that we have for the slide, and I guess I'll zoom in a second here. But basically the API is available in just kind of vanilla JavaScript. And it's also, they have basically wrappers, so you can use it in Angular, Ember, React, Backbone, kind of all the major frameworks. I've used the Angular wrapper for Firebase. It's called Angular Fire, and it works pretty well. I'm going to try to zoom in here. So just, let's see. Actually, I don't know how to do that. Any ideas? Command push.
Apple P
Do the opposite of that.
Command minus. That's as big as it'll get. Okay, well, anyways, I guess all I was going to say is the API is pretty easy to use. I don't know how well you can see that, but basically, oops. There's a pointer which I don't really know how to use here. Okay, there we go. So here you can see I'm basically referencing, this would be your Firebase URL. This is custom for your application. You create a reference to it, and then you can see I'm just calling a set and passing it JSON. And here's another example if I can get data based upon some location value changing. So what I'd recommend is, you know, I basically kind of want to get people aware of what Firebase is and what it can do for you and how much time and money it can save you. They actually have a really excellent website that has a lot of tutorials and examples, so I would suggest going out there and taking a look at it. And let's see, moving on. Okay, so basically, they provide this great service, and oh, by the way, I didn't mention it earlier, they were purchased by Google sometime last year. So this is something that Google believes in. They definitely have some money behind them, so they're here to stay. And the idea is, you know, they're providing this really awesome service for you, but of course, the downside is you have to pay for it. But when you think about it, all the time and money that you're saving by not writing all this code is probably going to be saved in the long run. So basically they have these different tiers, and basically the first tier here is what they refer to as their kind of like hacker tier, which is the free tier. And so while you're in development, you can use this, and anyone who wants to play around with Firebase can use this free tier. And there are some restrictions, like for example, your database can't be bigger than 100 megabytes in size. So that's good enough just when you're playing around and want to learn Firebase and see if it's right for you. When you're in kind of this free tier, if you kind of exceed these limits, you just kind of get errors and it would reset each month. But as soon as you're ready for production, the lowest tier here is this $49 tier. So let's say you push an app to production, you pay for this lowest tier. There's certain restrictions, but if you go above those restrictions, it doesn't like break on you. All it does is it charges a little bit more money. So for example, like some people have like, oh, I get 100 text messages a month, and if I go over, I have to pay for each text message. So it's kind of the same idea here. And anyways, like there's the highest plan here is, I don't think we'd ever exceed realistically like 10,000 concurrent users. I mean, I suppose if you're going to be like a WhatsApp or a Facebook, you're going to get bigger than that, but kind of probably 90% of what we're working on never exceeds that. And then they actually do support usage higher than this. So anyways, there's more information on their website. It really, if I had to summarize, you know, the main theme here with Firebase is it lets you focus on what's going to be important for the user. It's going to be that end user experience. The only concerns I would have, and I think probably other people would have, is, well, how well does it scale, and at what point is it going to be a problem from a performance perspective? You know, all I can say is when I did some reading about it, Firebase was claiming they have some clients that have tens of thousands of users or even hundreds of thousands of users. So if you go by that, you know, you'll probably be fine. And I think another good scenario is most of your products, especially like startups, you're going to do prototyping. Let's say you want to quickly build a product and release it into production and there's a limited budget. You can use Firebase, again, focus all your time and energy on having that rich user experience. And if you ever grow your site and it's successful and then you need to have, you know, support more than 10,000 concurrent users, at that point, you probably have, it'd be much easier to finance, say, a back end and make your own custom back end services if you want to. So anyways, that's it. Any questions? Yes?
So the prototyping case is totally clear why you do this. In situations where you have some amount of crunching that you want to do not on the client, so you're wanting to compute things, you're wanting to do some sort of asynchronous work that will then go out. Is it easy to integrate Firebase into some sort of server-side workflow?
Yeah, so I mean, you could have a combination of Firebase for a lot of your CRUD type operations, and then also have your own services to do, you know, whatever computations or whatever other things you want to do. So you could have, definitely makes sense to have a scenario where you can have both kind of side by side.
You can give a real example of that if you want. There's this music app I was working on that uses Firebase extensively where it's called Like Music, and that's where you have a station company or a tour station, and your friends can join. You also make the same app. So it's like you can invite friends, join me, they hear exactly what I'm hearing and what it's about. We have a server service that is also listening to Firebase accounts and does things depending on what's happening with clients. You have to make it as lightweight as possible, so we want to be able to support like 10,000 users within the same channel. We have really proper radius. So there were, you know, technical things we had to get around to make it for that server side of the service that does some like hard crunching. Didn't do that too often. So we have like a night we can kind of go through and validate anyone can now write to the path that says who the master is. And so you can set yourself as a master. Like, oh, I'm in a controller, and so for music to change in the last 2 seconds, I'm now. So there's always like.
Cool. Any other questions? Yeah.
Are there any competitors to like this product in general? Because I think like Ars.com is similar product at least in the past.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not aware of competitors, but they may exist.
Plus, as far as I'm aware, it doesn't provide a real time like Firebase does. So their competition with the media, I think has quite a lot of similarity to real time their competition.
I guess the biggest difference is Meteor is server side, whereas Firebase you don't have
No,
to.
Meteor actually provides both front end and back end.
But you still
Right,
have
but-
to host it yourself.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, with the Firebase app, in theory, you can have 100% just client-side code and let Firebase handle all the back-end stuff for you. All right. Anything else?
I want to say one more thing,
Yeah.
because just that I've used Firebase a lot of production projects, and in my own personal projects, I'm starting to move to using more of it. So I actually still maintain my backend Postgres or whatever databases, and then I push the data to Firebase, and it's the cache of all the users, all the clients are using that. But they'll still do REST calls to the server that then changes to Firebase. So everyone's getting real-time updates, and it feels like it's live, but you're actually doing the writes for the rest of this. So that's, I think that's a really common pattern. I would recommend.
Cool. I was curious, what's the advantage of that approach?
The main advantage is that one, like all of the writes are being done by your server. So like some of like there is sometimes hard business logic you need to do. You don't want the clients having to work for at all. That will just happen. And two, Firebase is essentially a cache engine. A lot of people end up having one section of Firebase for a cache version of the object, because you want to have an index to an object, and then there's the real object, but you don't want to have to go back to that real whole version of the object every time. So you have like little smaller versions of the object all over the place in the production environment, and then you want to maintain up those caches constantly. And putting that job on the server makes a lot more sense. And otherwise, like, which client can maintain this cache? Oh, I wrote the data, I have to go modify this thing places of caches.
Right.
It just gets kind of creepy.
All right. Thank you.